I often get asked, what story am I most proud about writing? I've been doing this now since the 80s, since back when there were typewriters in the office. I pick one that no one really knows about anymore. You can't even find much evidence of it online anymore. This is a little over 25 years ago. I was working at a paper in Connecticut. I came across an issue that affected Candlewood Lake, which is, as many people in Connecticut know, it's the state's largest lake. People in Western Connecticut know it's probably the most beautiful lake in Connecticut. But a lot of people don't know a little bit about the history of Candlewood. Two important facts. In the 1920s, it was actually built by flooding, much like the Quabbin Reservoir here. But as opposed to here, where it was used for water, there it was Connecticut Light and Power, and they built Candlewood for hydroelectricity. Flash forward 70 years later, and Candlewood Lake is at risk of overdevelopment because so much of that land is still owned by CLNP, all this natural land around the lake. And this is where I come in on a fateful boat ride. So I spent, as like I said, I'm a triathlete like John, and I spent a lot of time running around the lake and swimming in the lake and alongside the lake and looking at the beautiful trees. And normally I was a reporter covering business and government at the paper in Danbury, Connecticut. I'd normally have no reason to write about the lake. We had a nature writer who waxed eloquently about that. That was not my purview. But then the phone rang one day. Larry Marsicano, the head of the Candlewood Lake Authority, a good source of mine, said, "Why don't you come out for a boat ride?" It was a beautiful sunny day. I had a meeting with an important politician and the publisher of the paper that afternoon. I figured, no problem, I'll be back in time. I got to get out in the water. I always like to get out in the water, especially if it's good weather. So I took him up on the offer. I didn't expect there'd be some big story from it, let alone a whole series of stories. But, I want to see what he had to say. So we motored along the coastline. He showed me all the land that CLNP owned, but would now at risk of overdevelopment because CLNP had to sell its power plants because of deregulation, and all this natural land was part of the Connecticut Light and Power plant. Hundreds of acres of trees, of hills, forest that abutted the lake. Now, a lot of the lake is built, there are summer homes and year-round homes, but they also look out at some of the natural land that was part of the power plant. This definitely concerned me as he went on, and then I looked at my watch. It's like, I got to get back. So we motored back, and I sprinted up the steep hill to my car and drove like a maniac, breaking all speed limits through these back roads to get back to the newsroom where my patient publisher was pretty mad and getting red in the face because I was late and holding up everything with this meeting with this politician. But I couldn't stop thinking about getting back to work on this issue with Candlewood Lake. I started looking at documents and realized he was right. All this land that people had thought was just preserved parkland along a lake was actually part of a power plant, and it was actually going to be sold as part of the deregulation. Connecticut Light and Power had to sell off all its power plants because generation in New England was being deregulated at the time. There was definitely a risk. Say private equity comes in and says, okay, well, we got this power plant over here, but what could I do with all this beautiful land? Maybe build some houses. So I started writing story after story. Now, there are 5 communities that abut Candlewood Lake, and good luck getting any of them to agree. I mean, those in the room that live in Massachusetts know each town is very different. It's the same in Connecticut. We're a provincial lot here in New England. But these communities took the threat seriously, and I think having the local paper, some young upstart reporter writing about it constantly, probably helped that to some extent. So I covered the months of negotiation, reaching out regularly, calling CLNP executives, calling sources in the various town and city halls. And finally, we had the story. They had a deal, $2 million to put a conservation restriction over all of this land. Now, because I said this stuff is almost invisible online, I can't find out actually how many acres it is. I can't find my old stories. Hundreds, if not thousands. You look at a map, you can see what's developed. They were going to pay $2 million, and that'd be passed out over all the ratepayers in the region. Rounding error, it sounds like a lot of money, but you spread that over all the ratepayers, it's basically nothing. And that would save Candlewood Lake in perpetuity. No news outlets covered it. The Hartford Courant didn't come. The New York Times didn't come. The TV stations didn't come. I was the only one covering it. Years later, I tried to find some, because like I said, I'm sort of proud of what I did there. Tried to find some coverage. The only thing I could find was a small AP story that looked like it was just a rehash of a CLMP press release that came out in, I believe it was 1999 when the deal was signed. And now when I was looking to prepare for this, it seems all but scrubbed completely from the web. The press release announcing so Larry Marsicano eventually left CLA, presumably retired in 2017, and it doesn't even mention this among his many accomplishments in that press release. So I put Google's AI assistant to work to see what Google could find for me. And Google AI had heard of the conservation restriction. It dug it up off some legal document in the Candlewood Lake Authority's archives, but it got a fundamental fact wrong. It said that the conservation restriction was preventing the lake from being used for hydroelectricity, when in fact it was being used for hydroelectricity, but being prevented from development so that it could be used for hydroelectricity. I mean, theoretically, you could overdevelop and still pump water out of the lake and make electricity out of it. But Google didn't understand any of that. I kind of see this happening in the newsroom today, to be honest. I'll give you one example that my colleague, who will remain nameless, it was talking to an editor saying, I want to write about the biggest factory in Massachusetts. Dell has the biggest factory. Dell employs 10,000 people in this factory. Because, all of a sudden I'm listening and I'm like, that's right. And so I said, they started going on and, the editor's like, let's get out there. Because this was during Tariff Mania, which I guess still continues. Let's get out there and interview. Let's get on the factory floor. Finally, I sort of stepped in. I said, wait a minute. Hold on. Dell does not have 10,000 people working at any one site in Massachusetts. They definitely don't have a factory of any big size. There is a smaller EMC legacy factory in Franklin, but hundreds, not thousands of people are working there. Hey, where'd you find that? He said, I got this off of, I'll leave the name of the AI blank, but he was actually paid. I just used free Google. He was paying for this service to find out where the biggest factory was in Massachusetts. And the robots got that one wrong too. All right, back to Candlewood Lake so I can wrap up the story. The lake's now owned by First Light, a Massachusetts company. It's in turn owned by a Canadian pension fund. I don't expect they're going to sell anytime soon, even given what's going on between Canada and the U.S. right now. I mean, maybe if they push too far in this whole 51st state thing, we might see some divestiture. But, I mean, in seriousness, they could sell to private equity down the road, and a smart private equity person would be like, look at all that land, and then they'd see the conservation restrictions somehow. It's in paper documents protecting it from happening, but they wouldn't find it Googling. So I play just a small little role in all of this, drawing attention to the issue and making sure the elected officials and the executives at CLMP stayed on task and got this conservation restriction done so that we could preserve the lake that I loved and that many people in Western Connecticut love. Now, it's not something that I'm just doing. There were reporters at every small city back then, it's 25 years ago, doing similar projects, similar missions. Now, unfortunately, mid-sized newspapers have been gutted. I blame private equity a lot for that too. But they have maybe, when they had 50 reporters, they might have 5. Some of them don't even have newsrooms anymore. I mean, look at the local media landscape today. Who would answer the call when the next Larry Marsicano picks up the phone and wants some help in getting the word out? Most likely no one. Or maybe that call isn't made at all. Now we're entering a new era for journalism in which AI promises to put the robots to work for all of us. You can tell where I'm coming from this. I'm not quite sold on how good they're going to do the research that us humans can do right now. How trustworthy are they if robots get a basic fact wrong about what Candlewood Lake is used for? I mean, can we really trust what their information for our stories? Not yet. Can AI take a boat ride and look at natural beauty firsthand? Well, not yet. Are the robots passionate about the communities they live in, willing to work long hours, unpaid? Probably not. No. Can they badger elected officials and executives and get information out that no one else can get from those people? Well, not yet, but I think they're probably figuring out a way to do that. Hopefully, my job and my profession are secure for a little longer anyway. Just to be on the safe side, the next time a source offers to take me out on a boat, at least I'll know to schedule that ride for the weekend.
Right.
And that's my run-in with AI.